In fact, Africa has not only been dominated for centuries now by military, economical, or political means, it has been dominated by cultural means. So we understood that it was very important to bring science and knowledge back in Africa by Africans and for Africans. That is why we created the Institute of African Studies, of African Freedom, and that institute had like its goal to unite the best African intellectuals involved in the emancipation process through education. Our goal is to use education as a way to give a new verticality to African people, because many African people are destroyed in their inner self because they don't more believe in their ability to build their future. For us, education is a key of the process of emancipation, because by education, you awake somebody and he becomes autonomous and able to build his own future. If you can do so for the individual, you can do so for the society. That is why we founded our institute in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and in France, where we have a very important diaspora of Africans. And we are now 30 doctors of university of all disciplines, scientific or human sciences and so on, dispatched on the 5 continents and working together to produce the African discourse, the African speech of method. Yes, you cannot develop yourself if you are under military occupation in your home. The first thing for any human being is security. Security is the condition of all kind of activities after. That is why Aristotle said that politics is important for all human beings, because it organizes the city, and then there can be other activities because the city is organized. Africa is an invaded city for 5-6 centuries now, and the first goal is to put an end to military foreign occupation of Africa. If you look at the card of Africa, you will see that everywhere there are commodities, strategic commodities like gold, diamond, oil, gas, and so on, there are military camps. And military camps are all the former slave trade powers, all the former colonial powers, the contemporary neo-colonial powers, and even the dictators have adopted that method. They enslave physically, they force physically the people to fear the state without any relation of confidence, and then they can realize their policy. And their policy is against the interest of the population. The population cannot get some food, the population cannot get health insurance, the population cannot express itself freely, the population is no more able to think even. And then the problem becomes surviving every day. So, in fact, neocolonialism has become an ontology of the African situation, and we have to disontologize neocolonialism by working in the minds of Africans and working particularly on the relation between Africans themselves. Because the look an African has on another African is dominated by the look the West or the Middle East have about Africa. We have to think Africa like a good, a common good for African first. And then we'll be respected everywhere in the world. This is our goal, and that is why the role of France and the NATO in Africa is absolutely unbelievable in destroying hope for many generations. You cannot, more than 60 years after the so-called independencies, keep your armies in the same household, in the same position they were when you were the colonial power. You cannot keep 15 countries under your currency, controlled by your central bank, and keep the gold reserve of 15 African countries. And you are the first to build immigration negative policies against the populations that you have completely destroyed by your exploitation on the other hand. So fighting against neocolonialism is not a hobby, it is the condition for a new African renewal, for a new life. ECOWAS was created by two African leaders, one of the Republic of Togo named Nyamsi. He is a putschist, put at the head of Togo in 1967 by France and a former colonial soldier of the French troops. He properly killed President Sylvanus Olympio because that president, who was very popular and a true African revolutionary, a true African leader, was working for an independent currency in Togo. He was killed. So the person who created ECOWAS is a killer of African independentists with the help of France. On the other hand, Yakubu Gowon, the leader of Nigeria, Federal Republic, came to oath by a coup d'etat also, and he was supported by Anglo-American lobbies. So the two creators of ECOWAS are under NATO's control, under former colonial powers. And then ECOWAS, from its beginning till today, is under their control. They have a bureau inside the organization. And let me describe a bit what ECOWAS is. There is a parliamentary institution with many parliamentarians coming from all the countries of ECOWAS. There is an executive committee with one executive director, and there is the conference of the head of states. And there is no regular link, no correlation between what the parliamentary say, what the executive director says, and what the conference of the head of the state says. But finally, the decision comes from the conference of the head of state, and that conference is under French and NATO control. So you have an organization who says no, yes, maybe, perhaps at the same time. That is why the Sahelian State Alliance is emerging. There is a consensus on the principle of emancipation, sovereignty in that alliance. There is a consensus on the principle of financial autonomy. There is a consensus on the principle of building institutions, referring to the long African experience itself, but regarding to what the other countries of the world can teach us positively. This is a great hope for that region. Very clearly, companionship, partnership, and not domination. Africans have to think Africa for themselves, but they have to expect from the people or the powers that are fighting for a multipolar world, how can I say, a fair cooperation. Africans are not seeking to become Russians. This is impossible, of course. And I think Russians will never become Africans. This is not possible. But we are so concerned with the fact that the world is better when our differences are a source of positivity for all of us. It is important for us to have a free Russia. And we hope, and we are working with all Russian forces which admit that it is important to have a free Africa. So let us be free together. Let us share the world together. And what we expect from Russia is that partnership, that companionship without domination that we don't have with Western powers or with African despots. There is something very interesting in this session, is that you've heard two African voices. And for sure, we were not saying exactly the same thing. Not so? This is very interesting for the Russian intelligence of Africa to understand that there is debate in Africa, between Africans, about what Africa should be. There is an Africa of people who want to continue their evolution in the paradigm of Western democracy. And all African institutions emerged from the Western political will. They consider that working inside those institutions is the best thing to do. That is what I call neo-colonialist evolutionism. They hope that one day maybe they will be like the master. And this will never happen. In fact, because the master invents that democracy is a perfect model elaborated by Western thinkers and that Africans will never feel perfectly that model. No way. There is no need to run after a model you will never feel. They will never consider you like a true democracy because they consider they are the truth. And we have some other Africans who are working to renew with the tradition of Africa. And when I say tradition, it don't mean archaism. Back to African intelligence, African capacity, ability to create technology, to create new theories, to involve in science progress, to invent in all domains, and to assume the needs of its population. This is our tradition. Tradition means working for the future, if I can translate it in African tongue. And then for those Africans, Russia is very interesting because Russia listens to Africa. Do you know that there are many powers in this world who consider Africa just like a field of action for their interest, but not like a partner for dialogue? By naming this session, Dialogue for the Future, you recognize that all the African people, all the people of this world have something to say. And if we have to work together, we need to think together. Nobody possesses the truth. We are trying to walk in the path of the truth, and so we can share a better world. This is my first time to be in Russia. I discover Russia now. And my first impression is that this country is a continent, and that this country has a resilient mind, because I came when the winter was beginning, and I have seen that people who are able to survive under this kind of winter are very strong mental people. And the other thing is that the Russian scientists are, I think, maybe because the country has an anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist tradition, they are more naturally open to discuss with us and to understand what we say than others. So we do appreciate that that open mind of Russian scientists with their colleagues that we are, and we will be very happy to welcome you everywhere in Africa, because we have many centers of studies, of African studies that are working, like our institute, where it will be a pleasure for me to host some Russian scientists in the coming years. Thank you to the Gorchakov Fund for this wonderful invitation, and I hope we'll be coming here some other times, because now I have a good appetite of Russia and I want to discover and to learn more. The power of Africa is something very common with Russia, which is a mind of humility and resilience. We are very sure that we are the first humans. Humanity comes from Africa. Sapiens is an African. Before any continent of this world was populated, we were. And so we intend to rely on that long tradition of humanity to become what we were. We were the kings of our continent. We were the princes and the princesses of our continent. And we don't intend to dominate the world. We just intend to be respected by everyone. And the power of Africa is that patience, that humility, that resilience, and that resistance that never dies.